For today's webinar, we definitely want to encourage participation. So if you do have questions at any time throughout the presentation, you can use the GoToWebinar chat panel. And with that chat panel, we'll see your questions come in and either address them in line in the presentation, or if we didn't get to it in some form in the presentation, we'll definitely get to it with the question and answer session we're doing at the end. We definitely want to encourage audience participation, so feel free to drop your comments or questions into the chat window. Looks like we've got a couple more joining in right now, so we're going to give it just about another 2 minutes to let everybody get dialed in and get their audio set up. So while we're doing that, I'll just do a quick brief introduction for myself. My name is Christian Watson. I'm a Citrix Partner Solutions Engineer. I come from the Citrix Consulting organization before that, so prior to this role, I was traveling the country doing on-site engagements for various customers, helping them set up, configure, and deploy our solutions, analyzing their environment, things like that. So lots of hands-on experience and really excited to be able to present today on Citrix Workspace and our business continuity initiatives that we've developed and responded with in the recent months. Also on the line, we have Steve Harms from Panelists. He'll be taking over the presentation after a little over the halfway point. So definitely look forward to hearing his insights as well. And then we've got a couple of members from XByte as well, Ben Marquis, who'll be diving into some of the details of the hardware specifications that we're discussing today. It's important to know that we do have a $50 Amazon gift card giveaway happening as a result of registering for this webinar. And so the drawing for that prize will be done immediately after the webinar ends. And so the winner will be notified via email that they have won and next steps to claim the prize and so on. So just a quick overview of the agenda for today. I'm going to present on Citrix Workspace and business continuity. I'll do a nice hands-on demo of the Citrix Workspace running in production, and then I'll pass it over to Steve for some more details around how this aligns with the partner community initiatives. And throughout the presentation today, we're going to have a couple of interactive poll questions for you, the audience members. And so you'll see a pop-up come up on the screen with the poll question and then of course, answer choices. Please, if you would, fill that out. It's really quick and easy, and of course, the audience interaction helps us tailor our messaging and our presentation as a whole to really meet your needs. Looks like we've got a couple more still dialing in, so we'll give it just a minute before we kick off the first poll question. But once everybody's dialed in and on the audio, I think, Lindsay, it's probably a good time to go ahead and kick off that first poll question. So you should be able to see the quick poll now on your screen. And just let us know what your level of familiarity is with Citrix products. Are you familiar with all the above? The virtual apps and desktops, I think, is the main bread and butter. Most people are going to be familiar with that. But also on the networking front, Citrix ADC, formerly known as NetScaler, the name changed fairly recently. So definitely don't get those confused. It's the same product, just under a different name. Same feature set, same capabilities, nothing went away there. And that's the Citrix ADC, or Application Delivery Controller. In a similar name change, we have Citrix Content Collaboration, formerly known as Citrix ShareFile, which is our file sharing storage repository platform, very popular amongst enterprise customers. And then, of course, our ICA protocol, now often referred to as an HDX protocol, for the high definition user experience that it provides. And so we'll be kind of lightly touching on several of these today, but it'd be great to know just what your level of familiarity is with these topics. Cool. Thank you for your responses to the poll question. And of course, we'll be using that to shape the presentation throughout the rest of the session. So thanks for that. I'm going to go ahead and dive into the slides now, but as I mentioned earlier, if you do have any questions throughout the presentation, you can use the GoToWebinar chat panel to drop those questions in the chat, and then we will address them. Let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at the more complete portfolio of the Citrix Workspace Stack. So at the top, you'll notice a sort of new entry to the Citrix portfolio with the intelligence platform. This is combining machine learning and artificial intelligence to analyze the analytics data that we're gathering from our virtual apps and desktops and networking appliances to make sure that we're providing an organized, guided, and automated experience for end users within the workspace. And that builds on the existing framework that we were mentioning with the virtual apps and desktops, as well as the integration of SaaS and web applications that are increasingly popular in today's workspaces. Of course, we also include our content collaboration platform, which is formerly known as ShareFile, giving users the ability to work together collaboratively on documents, send documents over for signatures securely, store data, and manage data in the cloud or on-prem through that technology. And then finally, endpoint management, formerly known as Zen Mobile, now has been rebranded to Endpoint Management. And with our unified endpoint management platform, we're talking about mobile devices, tablets, laptops, personal computers, you name it. So a great variety of technologies, but all integrated under one solution and kind of seamlessly networked together. And in order to do that, we have to have, of course, the network capabilities with our secure access, but also the visibility and analytics to feed back into the intelligence platform. And then finally, the most important piece probably for a lot of you is the consistent user experience, so that your end users have a easy to use, easy to pick up, and overall positive experience with the Citrix technologies that are deployed today. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper now into Citrix Workspace, but I wanted to point out on this slide that delivering a consistent, high performance, and secure experience regardless of location. This is kind of the new description of Citrix Workspace, but if you're familiar with Citrix historically, you'll know that that doesn't stray very far from our traditional messaging of anywhere from any device. So a lot of the same principles and the same value that we've been delivering for many years is now continued in our Citrix Workspace platform. If we look at the overarching drivers for IT transformation in 2020, I would say this graph does a good job of giving just a high-level overview of where we are in the transition to flexible work from home environments. Because of the current pandemic situation, organizations have been forced to move entire organizations remote. And so while that's usually a quick response and time is of the essence in making that shift, securing the solutions kind of wasn't top priority at the onset of the pandemic. And so as we moved further into an extended work from home environment where a majority of users are still going to be working from home to this day, securing the solution and making this a more resound long-term solution is really the priority that we're kind of currently experiencing. And you can see from the graph that as we move later into 2020 and even into 2021, we're starting to see that flexible work environments that allow organizations to rapidly and dynamically decide to be in office or at home is kind of the ideal situation or the best case scenario for organizations today. And so as this graph kind of tailors off into the end of 2020, I definitely expect the priority on flexible work environments to be even higher in 2021. Back that up with some more concrete statistics instead of just a high-level graph. 40% of organizations worldwide are planning to accelerate new ways of working and automation as part of their return to workplace strategy. So that's a direct result of the current situation and definitely something that's going to shift customer needs and wants from their solutions going forward. 35 to 50% plan to most organizations plan to operate at 35 to 50% of their typical in-person capacity for an extended period of time. And so we're looking at half or even significantly less than half of the organization working from home or working remotely from maybe a coffee shop with not exactly the most secure Wi-Fi connections and things of that nature. And so as Citrix, we've taken it upon ourselves to develop a solution that even in this unusual circumstance, we're able to provide security and consistent user experience for everyone involved. And then finally, 25 to 30% of the global workforce will be working from home multiple days a week by the end of 2021. So a little more than a year from now, I think this number's definitely conservative, because with the current situation, I think a lot of organizations are testing the strength of their work from home solutions today. And some of them are finding that they work really well. Some of them are finding that they have some work still to go. But overall, I think the priority has shifted now, where work from home is definitely higher on the list than it ever has been before. And so as we look at our technology priorities for the next 12 months, when we talk about technology initiatives with our customers, or we look at the longer term goals that our customers are facing, a lot of these have been impacted directly by COVID. And so you can see the difference in the two lines here on the graph. At the start of 2020, the contact was made. And so some things like improving the use of data and analytics technology have lost a little bit of priority in favor of things where organizations are looking to redeploy existing IT infrastructure, increase security, increase flexibility. Things of that nature are starting to become higher priority. But regardless, Citrix has tailored a solution for a broad range of these priorities. And specifically today, when we're talking about the Citrix Workspace, I'd like to focus on the top 6 here in this list and point out that these align directly with the priorities that drove the evolution and the development of Citrix Workspace. And so as we look at things like increasing security, increasing cloud utilization, improving the use of data and analytics, moving your existing IT infrastructure, upgrading it, as well as investing in newer and revolutionary digital experiences for your end users. Again, I'm going to highlight user experience several times throughout the day. But before we move on into that and dive into the demo, I want to open it up now for the second poll question of the webinar. And so please, if you could, just give us your answers and your input as we're looking to tailor this and make it as relevant to you as we possibly can. So we've covered a lot of the current IT and business initiatives that we're seeing today internally, but I want to hear from you. Are there any initiatives that we missed? Is there something outside of this list that maybe you expected to see and didn't see? If that's the case, definitely feel free to post it in the chat and check the other checkbox on this quick poll. I think, of course, everyone's seen an uptick in the importance of remote work, but specifically remote work productivity, ensuring that your end users that are now working from home are still remaining productive even in the current situation, as well as looking at VDI and Windows 10 migrations, hybrid and on-prem hybrid, so meaning on-prem and some cloud, and a nice mix and balance there, and how to kind of accurately approach that. It's definitely an increasing priority. And then finally, secure file sharing. That ties closely in with our content collaboration platform, but it has proliferation into other products as well. Thank you for your responses. That's definitely helpful. So when we talk about flexible work environments, there's a lot of puzzle pieces that need to fall into place to make those happen and work effectively. And again, these are the fundamental pieces that went into developing and designing the Citrix Workspace. So by providing a consistent user experience, we're able to enhance the collaboration regardless of the user's physical location. So they can be in the office, they can be working from home, and by the simple fact that they're able to access the same applications, the same desktops, and the same user experience, look and feel that they expect from in the office, being able to have access to that from anywhere, any device, is absolutely crucial. Of course, with that positive user experience, it kind of naturally breeds simplicity. And so making it a simple, easy to use, easy to pick up, fewer clicks to get tasks done, those have all been top priorities in the development cycles. We also want to make sure that it's a modern look and feel. We want to make sure that we're not just designing a stepping stone ahead from our previous products. We want to really revolutionize the way that people are looking at and approaching their work today. And so by modernizing those tools on anywhere and any device, we're able to really shape the future of work. To get into some specific challenges that organizations are facing today, I think poor performing applications is kind of a recurring theme, especially when you're looking at work from home. And this can be a problem on multiple fronts, primarily from a diagnosis standpoint. If you don't have the analytics tools in place to monitor and measure your network traffic, you're not going to know what the root cause of a poor performing application is, or a poor performing desktop. With Citrix HDX technology, again, that stands for high definition experience. The idea is to provide the best possible experience for that end user, regardless of the network that they're on. So even with lost packets, even with completely dropped packets, or failing network connections, we're still able to provide and make the best of the network that the user is on. Also, utilizing our Citrix SD-WAN platform, we can integrate with that HDX technology, as well as cloud and cloud-hosted and web applications, and really reduce the number of steps or hops that the internet traffic has to take in order to get to and from the end user. Of course, with the work from home initiatives, security is a heightened concern, because users are now exclusively using their personal devices, and even taking a corporate-owned device home and using it on their personal network, of course, makes security's concern level increase. And so by providing single sign-on, we're, again, doubling down on that great user experience, but also providing the security that organizations need in order to be effective in 2020. Making sure that users are engaged. I know that disengagement, and especially working from home, it kind of promotes more distractions than you'd expect to see in the typical office workspace environment. And so by providing a single window to all of your work, which I'm going to show in the demo in just a second, we're really cutting down on the opportunities for employees to get distracted, naturally promoting increased productivity. And then finally, being able to work from home, being able to flexibly move back into the office at your own pace. The Citrix Workspace Back to Office solutions also provide the micro apps to ensure that workers are being safe, social distancing, and we've worked with several customers already on their back to office initiatives. So at a high level, I kind of mentioned the organizing, guiding, and automating pieces of the Citrix Workspace, but talk is cheap, and I'd much rather just show you exactly what I'm talking about with the Citrix Workspace solution. So give me just 1 second as I switch over to my demo environment. And I'd like to show you around the Citrix Demo Cloud. So everyone should be able to see here my activity feed. There's a lot of information on this one slide. as well as the new Citrix logo that was unveiled this week. That's a whole nother conversation we can get into. But we've revitalized our branding as we have also revitalized our products. But enough about that. Let's talk about what we're looking at here in the demo. So first things first, you'll notice that there's sort of a similarity and a lot of drawing in from like social media or social network sites where you have an activity feed that's organized based on your interests, your priorities, things that are critical to you. You can, of course, sort this by what's recommended based on that machine learning platform, or you can sort it by the most recent, so to see the latest and greatest that has come your way. On the right-hand side, we've got actions. Those are also referred to as micro applications. And the idea is that I think several of you have probably heard the printer analogy by this point. If you don't need the full application, if you just need a subset or a portion of the application, you're able to get that here from a micro application. And so just as an example of that, in our financial system, we have expense reportings that need to be approved. And so instead of having to launch a published application and log in that way and go through all the steps there, simply by logging into my workspace on the first page, I make one click, I can see all the details about Stella's expense report that she's submitted. And this is really all the information I need to make a decision. I can either approve it or send it back right from here. And since everything looks on the up and up, I'm going to go ahead and approve it and move on to my next task. You can see that's already been removed from my feed cards here. And I'm able to, without disengaging or getting distracted or even opening up the opportunity for a distraction, continue on with my workday. And so you can see here there's several variations of feed cards that you can open. Even if it's just informational, maybe I just need to know what our sales number is at for any given time. I'm able to get that right here in my feed automatically. But it's Citrix, so of course I'd be remiss without talking about the apps and desktops that are available. You can see here on the right-hand side my recent applications that I've used, as well as recent desktops and even recent files, which is a nice addition here. We've integrated with different file and storage platforms. So I'll show on the left here, you can of course add your favorites, but I've also got the integration here with share files. So with just a few clicks, I'm into my share file personal folders, but I also have integrations here with maybe, map network drives or, Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive for business. All of those can be integrated here. So the number of clicks your users have to take in order to get around is reduced. Desktops, of course, you do have the ability to add favorites here. And so I've favorited a few of those. And of course, you can see all the desktops that are available to you. It also goes without saying that you can, of course, search for any of these items if you'd like, or if you prefer to use the search bar instead of navigating via clicks. Same is true with applications. I've selected a couple of favorites here, as well as you can, of course, see the entire offering of apps that are available to you. And so if we just look at the favorites, I just want to showcase really quick 2 examples. We have Salesforce here, which will open the traditional web access to Salesforce. This is outside of the Citrix environment, so just straight to the web application here. You're automatically logged in using the credentials that you signed in with, and you can see that I'm able to get right into Salesforce very quickly. However, you'll notice that Salesforce Secured is also in the list, and so you're probably wondering about that. That is our secure browser service. Basically, the idea is that the session to Salesforce is now running on a Citrix-hosted virtual machine, and that virtual machine is heavily locked down, heavily secured, so that things like data loss prevention are heightened and security is at its highest. Of course, the traditional technologies of preventing copy and paste, locking down the browser are all here, but you'll notice some new innovations like watermarking the session so that if a user is trying to maybe take pictures on their cell phone and export data or exfiltrate data that way, you're still going to be able to identify the culprit for that. So, and you'll notice here, if I type something in and I try and copy it or paste it out, clipboard operations are prevented. So the same type of technologies that you know Citrix for in the past are still very much a part of the solutions today. Last but certainly not least, I wanted to showcase the micro applications and again tie this into our back to office initiatives that we've been developing. Several specific applications for COVID-19 response and back to office. So you'll see a few examples of those here. But for the more traditional customers, you're looking at integrations with things like Salesforce, where you can simply create a contact, create a lead, update an account, things of that nature, all from the Citrix Workspace without having to launch the full application. So the flexibility is as high as it's ever been. And I think that's going to conclude my quick demo of the Workspace for today. So just to kind of recap what you saw there in the Workspace demo, the feed and micro applications are definitely a new innovation that's going to make waves going forward. You saw, if any of you are familiar with iOS 14, you saw the announcement of app clips. So it's not just Citrix is talking about making micro applications, Apple's also following suit. And so while that's designed mainly at a non-business target audience, this is absolutely designed to improve your business experience. Of course, it wouldn't be Citrix without discussing the apps and desktops, and we're still delivering the great HDX and ICA technologies that have made that great for years. With integrating the ShareFile or Citrix content collaboration solution, you get access to personal folders, shared folders. It's just an overall great collaborative experience for end users. I showcased briefly the search, and then coming soon is our virtual assistants. You can think of it like virtual assistants that you know from personal devices, where you're able to ask questions like, who is John Doe? What organization is John Doe with? What's the status of this opportunity? Things of that nature, and get quick and proactive responses back. So with that, I'm actually going to pass it to Steve for the rest of the presentation. Steve, you can take it away.
I am unmuted. Thank you, Christian. I really appreciate it. That was a good overview. Kind of in keeping with the agenda, I'm Steve Harms. I own Panelists Corporation. It's been a Citrix partner for a little over 20 years. We've implemented literally thousands of desktops of this, and really looking forward to having additional conversations. So what I wanted to do today is kind of review a couple of use cases now that you've got a sense of what the technology is capable of, give you some kind of real world examples of how this came to be with a couple of our clients. So I'm going to be working with Christian to kind of say, okay, let's go to the next slide. So the logistical challenges that really pretty much all of our clients have faced have to do with with a variety of different issues. Business continuity, making sure that this became especially relevant during COVID, that people could continue to work and businesses could stay operational and stay functioning. Making the ability to work from home and to socially distance and so forth within an office helped with the safety issues. We needed to make sure that everything is working efficiently and that we're complying with public health standards and regulations. So all of these issues were taken into consideration as we move forward with a couple of the solutions for our clients. So next. So the first one I'll talk about was a talent agency client we have. They have an office in Beverly Hills and another one in New York. And both California and New York were among the first to shut down. And so we had, roughly 300 employees that needed to find a way to work that were used to working in the office. We had an initial Citrix deployment set up for them that supported about 25 users, kind of the idea being that when somebody's out in the field, they want a way to get in, or they're working from home. But it was, like most businesses, the focus was really on having everybody work in the office. The initial infrastructure that we had built, and this is the entirety of their infrastructure, was comprised of 4 Dell servers running the Zen Server hypervisor. Citrix is supported on virtually any hypervisor. You can run VMware, Hyper-V, Zen Server, etc. In this case, they were running Zen Server. The physical host provided the compute and memory resources. And then we have, there's a pair of Dell PowerEdge 720 XDs on the back end that are configured with all solid state drives using a product called DataCore to do basically server mirroring and it's a virtual SAN software. So the 720s are actually running Windows, and the data contained on it is controlled and managed by Data Core, and then Data Core handles all of the synchronization between the two devices to keep them mirrored. And for performance reasons, it's recommended that you have a 10 gig backbone. So all of the hosts are connected to storage via 10 gigs. All of the servers are connected to the workstation switches on 10 gig backbones, but the workstations are obviously still running on gigabit. So COVID shut down everything and everybody had to work from home. So I got a call from the CIO saying, how are we going to deal with this? And it was actually relatively straightforward. We had an environment built up for the 25 users. We simply scaled it up. We got some temporary licenses that Citrix was offering during the course of the COVID stuff, applied those temporary licenses, spun up new machines based on the environment that they had, to a point that we were literally up and running and supporting 300 users in a couple of days. And we did that over a weekend. So folks went home on Friday, came in on Monday, and there they were. They were logged on and able to do what they did. As often happens with a quick transition like that, there were applications and functionality that needed to be added after the devices had come up. And so we were able to add like their voice over IP system, give them access to Office 365 and SharePoint, and also access to their SQL-based line of businesses, the line of business applications. The way that we configured the environment is they have a pair of NetScalers. Originally, they had one in LA and one in New York, and we wound up moving the New York one over to Los Angeles, basically to provide redundancy for connection. The users, whether they're local on the network or remote, just go to a desktop.company.com address URL, and from there are presented with a login that gets them to that Citrix Workspace screen that you saw during Christian's demo. So once they were in, then they were able to go about conducting business. It's important to note, I think, that talent agencies are kind of unique business. Well, not that all businesses aren't, but they're very high demand and very high use environments. Talent agents are really sort of salespeople on steroids, and the #1 producing agent in their New York office was averaging an email a minute, all during the course of the day. And the kind of unique thing about this environment is every agent has an assistant, and the assistants actually get the incoming calls and screen sort of the incoming traffic and assist with answering emails and so forth. And they needed to be able to, very often what will happen is the agent will be talking to a client or having a conversation, and they'll want the assistant to be on the phone at the same time and listening in. And so we were able to configure their voice over IP system to allow to do all of that. It has gone so well that as they're beginning to move folks back into the offices, they're examining the cost of their rather expensive real estate in Beverly Hills and New York and determining that allowing people to work from home could actually allow them to reduce their footprint in their offices and save some money on the real estate cost. So it turned out to be a really smooth transition for them. To take a quick minute on a kind of a quasi-technical discussion, the way we were able to move them to, from 25 to 300 users in a couple of days has to do with the way that Citrix manages the deployment and the way they scale. In a workspace environment, whether it's a Windows 10 machine or in this case, they were using Windows 2016 servers and remote desktop underpinning of the Citrix environment, but basically shared sessions on Citrix on Windows servers. We have a golden image or a master image that is configured with the desktop and the applications and so forth that all the users need. And in this case, we're using a technology called machine creation services, which essentially lets us take that image and just spin up additional servers. Kind of the beauty of it all is that the additional servers are read-only devices. So they're effectively impervious to viruses and hacking, and nobody can accidentally delete a file or anything along those lines. And the other benefit being that when updates or patches or new applications need to be installed, you simply go back to the master image, update, apply your changes, and then tell the system, all right, take this master image and now update all of the production systems. And you press a button and it goes through the process of updating all of the production servers and you're done. So no need in this case to go touch a bunch of different servers every time you want to make a change. You go to one place, you manage it in one location, and you push that out to all of the different users. Any questions on that one before we move on to the next case study? Okay, great. Nothing? Okay. Christian, if you go ahead and let's go to the next slide. So this slide was slightly different in that this group they were already pretty committed to Citrix for their environment. They've got about 80 users running thin clients that connect to a shared server type environment similar to what the talent agency was using. And so we have devices that really require no maintenance or support or anything like that at the endpoint. And then same kind of an environment where we have servers that are configured to support the shared server type environment. In this case, we've got Dell 630s that again are using memory and being used to provide the memory and compute resources. Storage is being delivered from another pair of 720XDs, but in this case, instead of using data core, we use the Starwind virtual SAN software. It was a little less, well, it's actually considerably less expensive and met their needs. And then again, we've got 10 gigs connecting everything. When COVID happened, the office was shut down and people had to go home. And for all of the users, it was a really simple transition. They went home, either some of the users had laptops, some folks had PCs at home, but all they did was same thing. They had a URL that allowed them into the environment. And once they were in, they had the same desktop that they had when they were working in the office. There was literally no change. Remote printing was obviously supported, so if folks needed to print things, they could. These guys are using they use the content collaboration or share file a lot, so it's integrated into their environment. So they can send and receive documents and save and use it as a document repository, whether they're within the Citrix environment or not. So they kind of had that capability. We did add support for soft phones through Teams to their desktops, and as it stands right now, they've made the decision to kind of let some folks work at home and some folks work in the office. They own the building that they're in, so it made it nice and easy for them. But yeah, ultimately, all of the users now have the choice of working at home or otherwise. And with Teams and Citrix, and we've got Teams integrated into the Citrix desktop, so there's really nothing preventing them from having the same kind of work environment, even though there's some in the office and some at home that they had when everybody was in the office. And I should point out that all of the hardware we're talking about for both of these clients came from Xbyte. So it's been I've had a working relationship with them for about 15 years. It's been very mutually beneficial for both of us. So with that, I guess next slide. Are there any questions before we kind of get into the infrastructure piece of all of this? Okay. So in the interest of sort of giving you an idea of what might be required to implement something like this, we put together a couple of different scenarios, one for a relatively small user community that would be about 50 users. In this case, essentially what we've got is the Citrix VPX virtual load balancer is that NetScaler device we were talking about. The NetScalers come in both physical and virtual flavors. So in the case of either of these scenarios, we could use the virtual appliances as opposed to a physical appliance. They're a little easier to scale and so forth. In the case of the use cases, both the talent agency and the property manager, but all of their NetScalers are virtual appliances. And now those are sized and priced based on the really less the number of users, but more the amount of bandwidth necessary to support between the two. So in this case, kind of taking it from the outside in, the first step, the first hop would be to hit the NetScaler, and then from there they'll be connected and brought into the environment. And in this case, the environment, the configuration would be a 10 gig switch with a couple of servers attached, a pair of 640s connected we can actually use the servers themselves in their embedded storage to not have to have separate storage. We can kind of look at this as a hyper-converged type environment where both servers are providing CPU, memory, and storage, but they are mirrored. So loss of any one of the hosts will allow the system to stay up and running. And then obviously a battery backup to kind of keep everything going in the case of some sort of a power outage. Any questions on that? Okay. I do want to note that on both of these, that the environments that are, you're okay, you can go to the next one, Christian, thanks. In both of these, the environment that's defined would support not just the Citrix environment, but the entire environment as a whole. So we kind of sized it up based on what typically we see in these kinds of user communities. So we're talking not just Citrix, but also domain controllers, file servers, line of business servers, SQL servers if necessary. And this 200 user one is very similar to what both of the use cases have in place, where we've got in this case, it's configured or defined with a couple of appliance-based or hardware-based NetScalers, being the MPX, that then connect to switches. In this sort of an environment from a delivery of services and delivery of desktops perspective, what we've done is sort of illustrated how you can kind of mix and match. So I would say in my experience, about 90% of the use cases that we see for knowledge workers and even power users, using Windows Server as a shared desktop environment works very well. And it's completely scalable. You monitor it to make sure if you need a little more resource, you spin up a couple of servers. If you're over-resourced, you can bring a couple down. But they're essentially using a Windows Server platform to connect to. But there are also use cases where you may be running high-end graphics or AutoCAD or some sort of really heavy-duty graphics environment that requires a GPU or a graphics processor. That GPU can be installed into one of the physical hosts, and those GPU cores can be given to and defined as part of the overall configuration for a Windows 10 virtual desktop. You can do it with the shared server as well, but more often we tend to see it that if the use case requires a lot of graphics processing, then usually it's better served with a dedicated virtual machine for the user. So in this case, we would have about 150 users that would be running on the shared server environment, and then we've got these 50 users that are engineers, artists, things along those lines. And we have a server configured with a GPU in it so that those cores could be delivered to those Windows 10 machines. In the case of the server environment, it's a one server to many users. In the case of the Windows 10 virtual desktops, that's more of it is a one-to-one type environment. Now, the same thing applies in terms of the use of the master image and then replicating that out to provide the devices that the users actually connect to. One of the nice things about the capabilities of this environment and what Citrix does is I can have a Windows 10 desktop that's delivered to an end user, and embedded into that Windows 10 desktop are applications which are actually being delivered from the server-based environment. So I can have a master image from my Windows 10 users that has all of the applications that those users are going to need that's common to that, in this case, that those 50 power users. And then for any individual applications that say specific people within that environment need, we can actually deliver those apps from the knowledge worker or the server-based environment. So you have this ability not only to do an either or, but also an and. So it makes for a very flexible environment with lots of capabilities, and again, because we're really only dealing with master images, updating and maintaining the environment is much easier than if we had individual machines to deal with. So in this case, we've got an array of some Dell PowerEdge servers and the Unity storage for mixed workloads. What we kind of talked about here is kind of a standard configuration would be we'd have a certain amount of storage dedicated to VDI and the rest for storage, all of it. And we really do recommend that just from performance reasons that you use solid state for your storage. At a minimum, we'd say 15K SAS drives, but solid state's obviously better. And then to keep everything up and running, we've got a pair of Eatons with kind of A side, B side, so that all the servers that have and machines that have redundant power supplies can have, have one of those power supplies on one battery backup and the other one on the other. So it keeps everything up and running. And then the Eatons are great if you're not familiar with them, because they do a really good job of providing the ability to do orderly shutdowns and can communicate directly with the hypervisor and shut down virtual machines and then shut down physical machines. You can establish and define a sequence of events where that takes place. And then they also have the ability to do the same thing in the reverse. They provide smart PDUs that allow you to literally turn on particular outlets in the power distribution unit to power up the machines in an orderly sequence as well. So especially here in Florida, this is kind of a big deal for us. We see a lot of the Eaton stuff. So any questions on any of that? Anything so far on any of what I've talked about? Okay, well, I think we're ready for another poll question. So before we get started with we're kind of opening it up to questions to the table. And we're kind of asking, is there anything else you'd like to or want to do a deeper dive into any of these things, either see a demo or look at more of a customized solution, or if you have any kind of an IT project that isn't necessarily VDI related, or just send some swag or anything else. So I'll kind of quiet down for a second and let folks respond to this, and then we'll move into really what's kind of the Q&A portion of the webinar. Okay. Well, Christian, do you want to unmute, and we'll kind of open this up to questions to the community at large? So the question came up in we've got a few of these. Okay. The question was, how did the changes to the user count affect licensing? Licensing is handled in a variety of different ways. As I mentioned in the first model, Citrix was in a position to provide temporary licenses to address the COVID piece. The licenses that Citrix provides come in either what they call name seats, so you can have it either per device or per user, or you can do concurrent sessions. So if the number of users that are going to be connecting to the environment are greater than the number of sessions available, it's kind of the mix, whether you go per user or per concurrent. Generally speaking, per user or name seats, per user per device name seats are more common. Where I see concurrent and where we've used concurrent licensing are in organizations where they have specifically manufacturing, where you have or areas where you have multiple shifts and people are just coming in and using PCs in the office. So we have a manufacturer in New York that makes like diet bars, protein bars, that kind of stuff. And their production, they've got a bunch of Citrix stuff in their production environment, and they work a 24-hour around the clock, and they have 3 8-hour shifts. And so rather than having per user licenses, we got concurrent licenses so that they just come in and sit down at a device and they go in, and it's sort of worked out that way, and different users can go in. So there's a certain amount of math involved. In the property management company, really they already had the licenses, so it didn't impact the licensing much at all. The next question has to do with how did the scaling up affect performance? And the good news was, in the case of the talent agency, when they scaled up, we were able to add some additional solid state drives to the storage array. And we had enough memory and compute left over from what they already were running, that scaling up the environment turned out to not have much of a performance impact at all. So it really, the short answer to that question is it depends on the environment you have. But generally speaking, you get a lot more efficiency out of a Citrix environment, especially a shared server environment, than you do in a just kind of a standard, everybody's got workstations out there kind of thing.
It looks like the next question's for me. So the question is, how can I use Citrix to make the most of my on-prem hardware during these extended work from home circumstances? It's a great question because Citrix has definitely done a lot to adjust and shift our messaging around work from home in response to the pandemic. One of the technologies we've seen a huge adoption of is RemotePC. The idea that maybe you have physical desktops sitting in an office location that's currently closed, you're still able to map users to those individual desktops, either through a CSV file. It's actually a really simple process. Or if those are desktops that users had previously been using in the office, the VDA software will actually remember the user that was assigned to that machine, and will transition that assignment over to a remote work model. So you absolutely still can make use of those on-prem, maybe, for colleges, universities, things like that, looking to utilize a computer lab or, offices that are currently closed. You're still able to make the most of that technology. So definitely a good question there.
Christian, real quick, just to kind of jump and tag on that, we had a situation with a client that's an engineering firm, and we were able to bring Citrix into the environment to do exactly what you're talking about. They had a significant investment in high-end workstations, and previously, when it was just an occasionally off and on, users would use like TeamViewer or go to My PC or something along those lines to remotely control their desktop in the office. They found, and we did a pilot study that then eventually turned into more of a production environment, where we took those engineering workstations and installed the virtual desktop agent, the VDA, and provided a way for the users to come in remotely and access those systems. and they found the performance significantly better. It was as though they were sitting at the office. So yeah, that's a really good solution. It's a great question.
Yeah, and that's a great point to add. Not just the performance, of course, that's paramount to the user experience, but also to your IT teams in terms of security, making sure that you're still able to deliver on your security initiatives.
Yeah.
I know there's several point products out there that can do remote PC access in a similar fashion, but in terms of delivering a Citrix level secure solution, there's not many that compete with us. So definitely great points there. And it looks like there's one more. It says we're kind of coming up on time. Are there flexible licensing options for your hybrid environments? So whether it's on-prem virtualization, transitioning to cloud, or kind of sprawled halfway in between because of maybe some legacy applications that still need on-prem support, or whether it's on the networking front with moving your physical appliances to virtual appliances in the cloud for those SaaS and web applications as they gradually migrate there. On the networking front, we have pooled licensing, which allows you to have a flexible license that can move from on-prem to the cloud. And then on the virtualization side, we have transition licenses that come with hybrid rights. And hybrid rights basically just means that you'll be able to continue using your on-prem hardware investments throughout the cycle of that license, but also gradually be able to transition those licenses into the cloud. So, it's a journey, not just a flip of a switch, moving things to the cloud. And so making the most of and continuing to leverage your on-prem hardware is absolutely paramount for our end users and our customers. And so we've developed several licensing options there. That's just kind of the high level. So I'd love to have follow-up conversations on that if you're interested. So like I mentioned at the very start, we are going to do the drawing for the $50 Amazon gift card, and the winner will be notified via email very soon. We're going to do that drawing once we wrap up this recording here. We will be sending out a copy of the recording to let everyone have that for their own personal use going forward. So look forward to those emails coming soon. Anything else to add, Steve, before we close it out?
I don't really have much, unless anybody's got questions. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join us today. And thanks to the Xbyte folks for setting it up.
Absolutely, yeah, thanks to everyone involved.